Hello everybody, my name is Mars, you can call me MG if you would like, and today we are going to fix heated rivalry. Now, I do want to say right off the bat, this is a very subjective video, very opinion-based on my tastes, my preferences, my style of storytelling, so I just want to make that clear right now. This is not me saying these are, objective faults with the show and things that need to be changed for it to be like a flawless thing. Not at all. This is purely me having watched this show and being like, I wouldn't have done it exactly like that. Here are some things that I would change. I just think saying let's fix heated rivalry is kind of a catchy title, so that's what we're going with. I was kind of inspired to do this video by a video that my friend Violet did years and years and years ago, where she fixed Catching Fire, the third Hunger Games book, according to how she thought the series should end, which I will say that very recently she messaged the group chat and said, I'm actually having second thoughts now that I've reread Catching Fire, and I think it's a flawless book, and so it's a little bit funny, but anyway, her doing that video years and years ago is what planted the seed now for me to do this video, so here we are. Once more, I would like to just say, as I say in most of my videos, that I live on quite a busy road, and so you will probably hear cars driving by in the background of these clips. I'm sorry, there's not really much I can do about that. I will try and film around that happening, but I can't control when people drive down my street. So, sorry about that. That's just how it's going to be. So if you don't know what Heated Rivalry is a TV show created by Jacob Tierney, and it is based on the first two books in the Game Changers series by Rachel Reed, more so the second book. So the first book is called Game Changer, and we do see the couple from that book, but it is mostly based on book 2, which is Heated Rivalry, and it follows Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov, who are two rival professional hockey players, and it follows them over about 10 years of their life from their rookie season into their young adulthood and their relationship. So it is quite fun. It is very smutty. It is a romance story that features very heavily on the sex, so be warned about that. But a little disclaimer is that I have only seen the show. I have not read the books, and I don't really have any intention to read the books, but I do have some knowledge of them because my friend Nava, who is the person who convinced me to watch this show in the first place, has read all of the books many times. She's watched the show many times, and she's read a lot of literature about both the books and the show because she is currently working on a kind of academic article about it herself that she's hoping to present at a conference later on this year, so super cool. I love that for her so much. But I do have a little bit of background knowledge, is essentially the gist of this. I just haven't actually read the books for myself, so we are just going to be focusing on the TV show and the changes I would have made for that. And the last thing before we really get started on this video is a couple of warnings. First of all, content warning. Like I said, this show features a lot of sex, so if that's not something you want to hear about or talk about, maybe this isn't the video for you, and that's probably not the show for you. I just want to make that very clear that we will be talking about sex a little bit in this video. It's not the main focus of it, but it is a topic we will cover. And a spoiler warning that I will be spoiling the show in this video, so if you do want to watch it and you haven't yet, maybe do that first and then come back to this. It's not a super long show. It is 6 episodes, and they are both? 6 is not both. They are all about an hour long, so I'm not recommending you do this, but you could binge it in a day. Yeah, I enjoyed the show. It was very good, and so I would recommend it, and maybe go do that before you watch this. I don't know. I also don't know how long this video is going to be, because my outline for the script is 3.5 pages long, and I've never really had a script outline that long, so we are in this together, and we will see how long it ends up. So first off, let's start with my general thoughts and opinions. So, like I said, I really enjoyed this show, but I obviously didn't think it was perfect, otherwise I wouldn't be here making this video, but I still had a good time watching it. It's not my favorite genre of things. I'm not the biggest romance person when it comes to the media that I consume. I do like romance plot lines, but I don't usually like when they are the like focus of the story unless there's something else going on with it. So, for example, Ice Planet Barbarians. Love those books so much, and I think it's because they are romances set on a different planet. Like there's that sci-fi element to it. So, I am not the biggest contemporary romance fan, but I still thought this was very good. It was very compelling to watch. I enjoy that it has to do with hockey. Hockey is one of my favorite sports, though we will get to that a little bit later when we talk about some changes that I would make. But yeah, even though I wasn't obsessed with it, can see why kind of the whole world became obsessed with it because it was kind of a big cultural moment there, like end of December, beginning of January. I feel like everyone was talking about Heated Rivalry. So I'm a little bit late on making this video, but that's fine. I needed the time to kind of formulate my thoughts in a cohesive manner. Next, I want to talk about how my perceptions changed from when I first watched the show to now. So it has been a couple of months. I did think about rewatching the show, but honestly, I just have not had the time. I watched it in like mid-January, and we're now in mid-March. So some time has passed. I have been interacting with the fan community quite a bit. I've also, like I said, been talking to my friend Nava about it a lot. And so my initial thoughts on a couple of things have changed, and one of those things involves the time skips. So, right off the bat, I will say, I do not like time skips as a concept. They just do not work for me personally. So imagine my surprise when I start this show and it has a lot of time skips in every episode, pretty much. And it just jumps from one to the next to the next to the next, getting little like vignettes, little scenes before we move on. And originally I hated this because I don't like time skips. In my head, especially like a romance with time skips, I'm just like, what's the point of this? Why are the characters taking so long to get together? It's kind of stupid. But after talking with people and interacting with the community of fans surrounding the show, I have come to accept that it works in this show more than it does in other types of romances because of the age of the characters. So Shane and Ilya start off to be about 17-ish, and it follows them over almost a decade, so they end the show at about 26-ish. I don't think their ages are ever explicitly stated, but that's kind of where I think they fall. And that is a very tumultuous time for people to be growing up and like learning who they are. So it's not just two characters who can't get their shit together and figure out whether they want to be together or not. It's two basically children. Like 17-year-olds are so young, like still learning who they are as people and how to be people while also being in the public eye as these professional hockey stars. And there's this like external pressure to be these rivals because they are starting in the same season. They are both superstar players and absolutely wonderful at what they do, and so they're kind of pitted against each other in this rivalry kind of way. So, as much as I'm not a fan of time skips, I feel like it works better in this show than it has in other shows and books and movies with time skips that I have, read and watched. The other element of the show that I have had my perceptions changed about is actually the sex. So, I am quite neutral towards sex in stories. I don't actively seek out romances that have that, but I also am not in the camp where I feel like smut automatically detracts from having a romance plotline. I don't really care either way. I've enjoyed stories with it, I've enjoyed stories without it. So, when I first watched Heated Rivalry, I thought that it was a lot of sex and maybe too much, and I felt that in this instance, maybe it took away from the development of the romance. But then I saw a Tumblr post that really had me thinking and had me conceptualizing this in a whole new way, where someone said that Shane and Ilya use sex as their love language, and it really had me thinking about how sex and romance don't necessarily have to be these two separate things, and in fact, most of the time they aren't. They are very much intertwined, and it had me examining the show more through the lens of the sex furthering the romance plots. So yes, the sex in the show is just that, but it's also more than that, and I am really glad that I saw that post because it had me thinking about things in a way that I never really thought about before, and it had me enjoying that element a little bit more. Next, I want to talk about what the show did right. And since we're already talking about sex, we can just start right off the bat with that. I really like how there was emotional intimacy in the sex scenes. So Shane and Ilya are checking in on each other and making sure that what is happening is what both of them want to happen, even despite the emotional turmoil that they are dealing with. I really like how there is kind of pushing, I guess is a way you can describe it, but it's only when it is very clearly wanted, and the two characters do stop when it is very clear that neither of them want it to happen. So some examples of this are the phone call scene at the cottage, which is one of my least favorite scenes because I get secondhand embarrassment so bad, and so I was just cringing the entire time watching that. But that is a good example of pushing. I mean, yes, a no is given, but it's very clear that it's more of a soft no, and Shane is really giving Ilya the permission to keep pushing him. But then on the other hand, we have a scene from earlier on in the show where Shane is like, I don't want to go any further with this right now because Scott is in the next room. Scott is another character that we will talk about a little bit later. There are sirens going, I'm sorry about that, so I'll finish this clip up quickly. But I really like the dynamics between those two scenes where a no is given in both, but the two characters learn to see each other well enough to know when a no is actually a no and when a no is just, I'm playing with you and I do want to keep going. And branching off of that, I also enjoy how the show tackles emotional intimacy outside of the sex scenes. So, for example, between Shane and Ilya, they both have their own reasons for why this sexual intimacy is a lot easier to deal with, especially towards the beginning of the show, than it is to deal with the emotional intimacy, especially because of the whole sexuality aspect of it. These are queer characters in a setting where queerness is not exactly celebrated. Hockey is a very masculine and heteronormative kind of situation, and so Ilya being bisexual and having kind of always known he's bisexual is more comfortable with himself, but Shane did not know that he was gay. He didn't know it for a long time, and even into his relationship with Ilya, it takes him a long time to realize, oh my god, yeah, I've been having sex with this man for years, but I'm gay, and that is terrifying. So that's kind of a funny way that they show this kind of intimacy, but it's also very heartfelt. But also outside of Shane and Ilya, I feel like there are a lot of great examples of emotional intimacy, especially between characters like Shane and Rose, and on the flip side of things, Ilya and Svetlana have a couple of really great moments. I also really like Shane's interaction with his parents, especially as you go through the show. You can see that kind of strained relationship and how tensions are building until ultimately they are released towards the end of the series, and you do get that emotional breakthrough between them. I think it's very well done. And finally, my favorite part of the show is honestly the autism representation. So if you didn't know, I myself am autistic, and I love witnessing media that has autistic characters in it, especially when they are done well and with care, and I really feel like Heated Rivalry is one of those shows. So Shane is our autistic character, and I love how he is not a stereotype. He very clearly has kind of stereotypical autistic traits, but he's not treated as a cardboard cutout of a character, and I really enjoy how Shane is wanted and desired on several different levels, not just sexual with Ilya, but he's also a very sought after professional, because of his hockey fame. A lot of people want him to rep their companies and be in their commercials and promote their brands, and a lot of people kind of thirst after him. He's seen as sexually desirable by people other than Ilya, which I feel like is a character trait that not a lot of autistic characters get to have. Autistic characters are usually infantilized and made to seem like childlike, so they don't really get to have that kind of sexual aspect. So I thought that was very well done, and I'm very happy to see that. I also really love how the actor who played Shane said that he modeled his autistic traits of the character off of his own autistic father, and like you can really tell that this is just like a labor of love for him, and so it's just very beautiful, and it makes me very happy to see that and to think about it. So now that we've gone over my favorite elements of the show, it is time to get into the actual things that I would fix. So we're going to start off with the big changes that I would make. And I think the biggest change has to do with episode 3. So, if you haven't seen the show, I'll give you a little bit more context. So like I said, there are 6 episodes, and episodes 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 follow Shane and Ilya. Episode 3 follows Scott and Kip. This is the couple from the first book in the series, and Scott is another professional hockey player. Kip is a juice bar employee, and essentially Scott goes to get a smoothie, I think it is, and is kind of like immediately interested in Kip. There's like a spark there between them, and so that's where their romance kind of kicks off. But it just felt so weird to have their romance like interrupting the like wider storyline of Shane and Ilya. So I think it would have been a much better element of storytelling if their romance was sprinkled through, because there is a very important scene later on in the show involving Scott and Kip that we do need build up towards in order to then reach the completion of Shane and Ilya's story. So we do need to see Scott and Kip, but I just don't think it was gone about the right way. I feel like we should have had little moments, maybe like 1 or 2 each episode, where the watcher, the viewer, is told that like, hey, these are important moments, these are important characters, keep an eye on them, but like Shane and Ilya and our other main characters that we're following don't necessarily know the importance of them just yet until we get to that culminating scene later on in the show. So, for example, I have 4 things that I don't know if they would actually work, but I think they would be interesting scenes to have put in, and they might work with the timeline, they might not. Like I said, don't like time skips, so I'm a little bit iffy on how the timeline actually works, but my ideas are Shane is in New York filming an ad campaign. New York is where Scott's team is based, and he goes to get a smoothie, and he runs into Scott while he's talking to Kip at this juice bar. That would be an interesting way to introduce the characters, maybe, or at least introduce Kip, because we are introduced to Scott very early on in the show. Maybe Ilya is attending this black tie event that Scott is attending and Kip is working, because there's a moment where Kip like comes out a door and he runs literally into Scott, and they have a little moment together, so maybe we see that in the background of Ilya also attending this event. We have Svetlana, who is Ilya's friend, and maybe she's in New York when Ilya's team is playing Scott's team, and she goes to support Ilya because they're friends, and she happens to sit near Kip and his friends and overhear some things. I don't know, maybe. And my 4th idea has to deal with Rose, and maybe she's at this art gallery and she sees Scott suddenly exit, but she doesn't know who he is in that moment, but the viewer does. There's a moment where Scott and Kip are like trying to be this normal couple going to this art gallery, but Scott panics because, like I said, hockey is a very masculine, heterosexual type of thing, and he is not ready for people to know that he is gay. So I feel like spreading out the information among other characters and their little scenes would have integrated the Scott Kip storyline a little bit better and still have that build up to their big moment that then spurs on the big things between Ilya and Shane. The other big change that I would make is that I want more hockey. So, this show, or more realistically, the books, are advertised as hockey romances, but I would venture to say that they are not. They are romances that just happen to feature hockey players because the hockey is not an integral part of the storyline. It's important to the setup of this because they are queer characters in a very not queer setting, but I don't think it had to have been hockey. You know, like it could have really been a plethora of different setups that we would have gotten the same kind of vibe, but I really love hockey and I wanted to see more hockey in this. Specifically, I have an idea that I might write as a fanfic still. I've been thinking about it since I watched the show, and it might still happen, but we will have to wait and see. I just have not had the time to do it. But my thought is that I want to see a hockey fight specifically because I love hockey fights. I want to see a setup where Shane and Ilya's teams are playing each other, and it's just a terrible game. I kind of actually want to specifically draw on a game I've seen in real life. So I saw the Flyers play back in January, and it was against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it was their second game against the Lightning, both games having been played at the Flyers' home ice. And Tampa won the first game, Flyers feeling very dejected, and the first period of that game, very boring, absolutely nothing happened. But then the tension started rising because that's what happens in hockey is the later you get in the game, the more stressed and irritable the players get, especially if things are not going their way. And that's when fights tend to break out. So I want these two teams to have played each other already. Maybe it's like a home-home situation where they play one game in Boston where Ilya's team is set up and one game in Montreal where Shane's team is. And I don't know who would win the first game, but it was still like a bad game in my head. Like the players weren't really like doing their best. They were all kind of like tired and frustrated. So getting into this second game with the same teams playing each other, they're already having these tensions and they're still like very thrown off. Shane and Ilya being the captains of their team, and they are clearly having these issues. Like that's going to affect all of the players. And I want Shane and Ilya to have a fight and to actually start kind of like beating the shit out of each other on the ice. I would love that because I really enjoy that sort of thing in a story. I love hurt comfort, and I really, really love it when it is the characters who do the hurting that also do the comforting. So I want them to just really duke it out, get some good hits in, maybe even like a broken nose. Like, I want this to be violent. And then, because it's Shane and Ilya, they end up having sex about it later on, and then they have the emotional, like, reconciliation. I think that would have been so fun to bring in more hockey, but also to add another element to the actual romance plotline. And I know that would not be to everyone's taste, that is catering specifically to me, but I mean, this whole video is catering specifically to me, so I just really would have loved to see that in the show, and so that's why I might write a fanfiction about it. But we'll see. And then there's really only one other change that I would have made to the show, and it is a much smaller change, I think, and that is just better distinguishing through the time skips. We've already established I'm not a time skip person, but I do think even outside of that, the way it's done in the show is kind of hard to follow. So I really would like to see the characters actually like aging over the course of the time skips. I mean, this takes place over 10 years from their late teens to their mid to late 20s, and that is a time of great change visually. So I would like to have seen them look super young and then get to be older actual adults. It's done a little bit, but I would have liked it to be a little bit more drastic and noticeable, maybe through a little bit of makeup effects or even just like haircut changes. I feel like could have helped the time skips feel a little bit more like noticeable and understandable, if that makes sense. So in closing, I would just like to reiterate that I did really enjoy the show, and I'm glad it became this kind of cultural phenomenon and that everyone seems to have loved it, and I 100% think that these are all just my opinions and do not think that you guys have to agree with me. In fact, if you don't agree with me, that is great. Let me know down in the comments and we can have a discussion. I just had a really fun time interacting with this story that has so much that I love. You know, the queer representation, the autistic representation, hockey, even though, as we've established, I don't think there's enough of that in this show, and getting to kind of just think about it from almost a critique kind of lens and figure out, okay, if I was the one tasked with telling this story, how would I have done it? Because it's just a fun exercise in storytelling, and as a storyteller, obviously, I enjoy that sort of thing. But yeah, let me know down in the comments if you agree on certain points, if you disagree, what other kinds of changes you would have made to Heated Rivalry. I think it would be so fun to chat about it with you guys. But I do hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit different than my usual repertoire, but I had a lot of fun kind of like planning it out and making it, so I hope you had a lot of fun watching it, and maybe I'll do something like this again with some other piece of media if I feel so inclined, but we will have to wait and see. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone!